So the Great Sphinx of ancient Egypt has unequivocally been one of the central focuses of ancient history and ancient mysteries for thousands of years. Even ancient Egyptians who were born much later than the construction of the Great Sphinx held it in high regard. We know this because under the reign of Pharaoh Thutmose IV, a grand stela was built to be installed in front of the Sphinx, which was already of great antiquity during the time of Thutmose by at least 1,000 years. So with this, I figured I would assemble my own top 5 unexplained mysteries of the Great Sphinx of Egypt. If you guys would like to see more videos like this, well, please like and subscribe for more. I really want to continue making ancient history and ancient mystery videos for you guys on a full-time basis, and your support will actually make that possible. At number 5, we have the well-known mystery of the alleged water erosion around the Sphinx. This is probably one of the most polarizing topics surrounding not only Egyptology but ancient history in general. The deeply cut and fissured weathering patterns of the Sphinx enclosure is seen as more than indicative, almost proof to a large number of people that the enclosure in which the Sphinx lies must be of incredible antiquity, dating back anywhere from 7,500 to 10,500 BC. The disagreement in age comes from more traditional geologists and archaeologists saying that the Sphinx enclosure is likely a result of wind and sand erosion, whereas other scientists who have viewed the site say that the weathering patterns are without question from intense water erosion that would not have been plausible during the time of dynastic Egypt. More so, the Sphinx enclosure at the very least must date back to at least 7,500 BC, during a time when Egypt was much more green and experiencing more rainfall. I'm currently in the middle of reading Robert Schoch's Forgotten Civilization, where he details his venture in Egypt as a geologist studying the Sphinx enclosure, and I must admit that I see a lot of merit in the idea of, again, at least the Sphinx enclosure being of incredible antiquity, upwards of 7,500 BC. So one thing that perhaps not many people know is that the Sphinx enclosure was likely intentionally buried. This creates a huge plot hole in the Egyptological story, and in number 4, I'll explain why. At number 4, we have the mystery of the buried Sphinx, which is not at all disconnected from mystery number 5, detailing the supposed water erosion within the Sphinx enclosure. Conventional Egyptology tells us that the erosional patterns are from wind and sand erosion, but if conventional Egyptology also tells us that the Sphinx was intentionally buried circa 1400 BC and that the Sphinx was only built approximately 1100 years prior, that means that 2/3 of the Sphinx life has been spent buried from the neck down. So if Egyptologists tell us that wind and sand erosion created these erosional patterns in roughly 1,000 years, and geologists like Robert Schoch claim that this erosional pattern must be indicative of intense water erosion over the course of thousands of years, these are two vastly different explanations, neither of which has been unequivocally proven true, but yet most likely one of these theories is true. I know that we're not all Egyptologists, geologists, or scientists, but your opinions really do matter, and I'd love to know what you think about this specific topic in the comment section below. How do we reconcile the intense amount of water erosion within the Sphinx enclosure when the traditional idea is that it had only been exposed for 1100 years and that it could be no older than roughly 2500 BC? So the third most mysterious aspect of the Sphinx is something you maybe have never thought of before, but it's something that the Sphinx has in common with the Great Pyramids on the Giza Plateau. There are absolutely no hieroglyphs on or within the Sphinx or Sphinx Temple. This is, in my eyes, one of the biggest plot holes in the entire Egyptological story. Nowhere on the Giza Plateau do we find hieroglyphs dating back further than 2490 BC. Which is the estimated time of the completion of the youngest of the Great Pyramids on the Giza Plateau, known as Menkaur's Pyramid, which we are told was built after the Sphinx. So not only do we have no on-site documentation of the Sphinx or the Sphinx Temple, but also there are absolutely no hieroglyphs written within the Khufu, Khafre, or Menkaur Pyramids at Giza. 5 enormous megalithic sites with no inscription to credit the architects or pharaohs who reigned over their construction. One explanation I often see is, oh well, Egyptians just didn't use hieroglyphs at that time and that's why you don't find any there. However, if we go to the Saqqara necropolis in the tomb of Djoser beneath the Saqqara step pyramid, we find ancient hieroglyphs depicting Djoser visiting divine sanctuaries in the afterlife, definitive evidence that Egyptians prior to the construction of the Sphinx were implementing the use of hieroglyphs within sites of importance. So here we're left with an unclear conclusion in regards to who exactly built the Sphinx and when. And at number 2, if I ask you or anyone else what animal does the Sphinx represent, the likelihood is that we'd all guess a lion. And this may be an on-the-nose observation, as the Egyptologists already conclude that the Sphinx is meant to be representative of a man's head on a lion's body, but many researchers take it one step further. Over the last 3 decades, new research is suggesting that the Sphinx may have at one time been completely a lion, with the original head being chiseled away to reveal a man beneath. Even from an unscientific standpoint, this doesn't seem impossible. The body-to-head ratio of the Sphinx is noticeably disproportionate. Even other smaller Sphinx found throughout ancient Egypt are more proportional than the Sphinx itself, showing that the Egyptians were capable and aware of proper proportioning. Furthermore, tying into the work of researchers like Robert Schoch, John Anthony West, and Graham Hancock, all of which propose a potential Ice Age high culture, during the time of the Ice Age, the Sphinx would have directly faced the constellation of Leo during the time of 10,500 BC, which is also the age at which Robert Schoch's geological work suggests the Sphinx may be. Now the problem here is, were ancient people following and tracking the stars during this time? And if they were, how do we know that they acknowledge the same astrological signs as we do today? The oldest record of astrology in that area of the world dates back to approximately 3000 to 4000 BC in Babylon. This puts a 6,000 year gap between the construction of Babylon and the proposed intentional alignment of the Sphinx to the constellation of Leo. So, in some ways, through negative evidence, we find ourselves at the conclusion that the Sphinx must be older than traditionally thought, but we still don't know for sure. And the number 1 unexplained mystery of the Great Sphinx of Egypt is the infamous, mysterious chamber beneath the Sphinx's left paw. This theory all began when American clairvoyant Edgar Cayce stated that while in a trance, he had a vision of Atlanteans burying the now lost and forgotten history of their civilization beneath the Sphinx. Several decades later, geological and geophysical work would indicate that there were indeed various chambers or void beneath the Sphinx monument. But the void most intriguing to many researchers, and certainly some Egyptologists as well, is the proposed chamber beneath the front left paw. Now, some drilling was done at this site, but the Egyptological fraternity in Cairo stated that there was nothing to be found. However, official reports were never released, so you do find some independent researchers speculating that there may be some dishonesty here. But none of us can really know for sure. Now, Matt Sibson over at Ancient Architects makes a great point about this as well. The Egyptians were clearly aware of issues with flooding before and during the construction at the Giza Plateau, and from our point of view, it seems highly unlikely that the Egyptians would create a chamber beneath the Sphinx in fractured limestone that is clearly prone to flooding. However, I could see the argument that perhaps the terrain was almost entirely different during the time of the Younger Dryas, if that is when the Sphinx was constructed. Perhaps at that time there was no obvious indication that you should not be constructing chambers beneath the Sphinx. Now, that's getting way out there, but I could see that idea being proposed as well. The point is, we won't know for sure until permission is granted to drill again and send cameras down into these chambers or voids to look for anything that acts as a semblance of a man-made structure in what is probably otherwise highly eroded chambers or voids. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, as it allows me to continue making these videos for you guys. And I was getting questions about this, and I promised that at 5,000 subscribers, I would begin working on my Patreon, offering exclusive Patreon videos, early access to all YouTube videos, exclusive Q&A sessions, as well as giving you access to all of my scripts and sources. I promised that I'd start working on that at 5,000 subscribers, and we hit 5,000 a few days ago, and now we're at 7,000. So I'm working on it, and it'll probably be live sometime next week. Thank you all so much again. I'm Luke Caverns, and we'll catch you all next time.